Yo, what's up? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of The House of Salt, the show where we talk about video games, game design, and the games industry as a whole. My name's Bao, and today we're going to be discussing probably the number one question that I'm often asked when people find out that I work in video games, which is, how do you get into games? Keep in mind, this is based off of my own personal experience. So there'll definitely be those who chose a different route or had like a different experience during the process getting into games. Also, this approach is specifically associated with game design, as each one of the disciplines will have their own set of requirements and hurdles that you have to get past. That being said, there's still going to be a bit of overlap there, so just bear with me. Someone once told me that the games industry is kind of like a club. You know, it's difficult to get in at first, but once you're in, you're set. And to an extent, I do agree with this. That being said, however, nowadays there are so many more options and potential avenues to get in through that door than pretty much there was ever before. So there are schools like Full Sail that offer comprehensive courses on game development, with teachers often having experience in the industry as well as potentially even still having active connections out there who can sometimes even potentially assist with job placements towards the end of their courses. In addition, many other colleges nowadays are starting to offer their own classes on the subjects for things such as game design, art, animation, and programming. Nowadays, schools are becoming a much more viable option with regards to gaining the skills, tools, and practices associated specifically with game development, and are definitely worth some investigating. Keep in mind that these classes will often offer a broader, more general approach to build a foundation of knowledge as opposed to specifics. This is actually purposeful, as all of the companies out there will have their own respective proprietary tools, pipelines, and practices that you will actually have to learn and adapt to once you get there. So another potential option for getting into the industry is through internships. These will often be unpaid, but if they're available and you can swing it, the experience you can gain from them would be incredibly invaluable, especially to make a good impression on the team and the company. That being said, internships can actually be a bit few and far between nowadays, but they are out there, so keep an eye out. So the way that I personally got into the industry and the avenue that I would highly suggest considering is through quality assurance, also known as QA or testing. There's sometimes a stigma attached to QA, depending on who you ask in the industry. Some people tend to look down on it. However, that being said, I highly recommend this option. So it is by far the most approachable route. It often includes contact with development teams, understanding practices and pipelines, but also some of the important skills required for being good at QA are having great attention to detail, developing good communication skills, as well as the ability to break down systems and mechanics in the pursuit of reproducing bugs. And in my opinion, these are actually crucial skills for game designers as well. So one other approach is to start off small. You know, and leveraging an existing title that you're both familiar and passionate about, and kind of use that as a basis to create some mods or maps or models or levels for games such as StarCraft or Call of Duty or something. There's actually several out there. This will actually help you get familiar with the tools in the pipeline while allowing you to focus test your maps with respect to communities associated with those titles. In fact, there's actually been many examples of developers actually hiring people from their player base who have created assets for their titles themselves. One of the first steps that I would do is actually start to do some research and find out what companies or schools are available in your area or in an area that you might be able to relocate to. This, of course, would vary depending on which approach you're planning on taking. So there are plenty of websites available that I would highly recommend that you use, that you utilize during your searches. Websites such as Gamasutra, LinkedIn, GameDevMap, GameJobs, etc. I'll post some links in the description below. These sites are all easy to use, they're informative, and they can let you know of any local companies in your area. In addition, some of them also include some pretty insightful articles about the industry, as well as often some of them will include details on job descriptions and as well as other resources that you could leverage during your search. So I do want to briefly touch on the subject of mainstream versus indie development. So a position on a mainstream product may often come with a lot of benefits, things such as, of course, the salary, medical and dental, paid time off. Some companies will have 401k, you have a team to work with, sometimes marketing for your title, etc. This, of course, is all dependent on the company as well as the project that you're working with. But creatively, mainstream development can also have its own share of headaches and restrictions as well. In particular, game design on a mainstream title is more than likely going to follow some sort of current or popular trend, which will be reinforced not only by your higher ups, but your publisher as well. And this can sometimes run the risk of feeling a little bit stifling or restricting. So this is actually especially true as companies are normally unwilling to push unfamiliar or new ideas, much less radical ones, as these can be directly associated with unknown factors and risk. And to an extent, it's actually understandable. It's much easier to leverage a known or familiar formula than it is to start from scratch and thereby having to figure out each and every single hurdle that may show up during the development process. Whereas retreading familiar territory means that you could basically reference another title that has already done the heavy lifting and answered a ton of these issues, or answered a ton of these questions, and use that as a starting point. Hence why there are so many sequels all over the place and you see companies reusing the same formula over and over again. This is actually a pretty substantial topic, so we'll circle back to this on another episode. So another potential option is to not go the mainstream bigger company route and actually try your hand at indie game development. Now indie can be a bit more of an unknown and scarier prospect. You may end up trying to tackle an entire project on your own, find yourself getting overwhelmed or discouraged, possibly even to the point of giving up. This can be especially true if you're still working a day job while you're working on your own project. However, indie development can also be the epitome of creative freedom in game development. It's a constant source of creative, disruptive, and trend-breaking software, which is so important nowadays. In addition, there are so many tools and resources available to aspiring indie developers that it actually makes the option much more viable and appealing. In fact, if you're actually serious about becoming a developer in any way, shape, or form, I would highly recommend looking into one of the many free game engines that are out there. Look up some tutorials and start working on your own little mini project. The experience that you actually gain from using these tools and pipelines may not be one-to-one transferable. However, the lessons you actually learn through the process will assist you in becoming more familiar with the game development process as a whole. So if you're looking to gain some experience and familiarity with some legit game development tools and engines, there's actually several options for you to choose from. Some of the engines out there that are readily available to the public are those such as Unity, there's Unreal, there's the IW engine, there's StarCraft 2 editor. In addition, there's actually some available on Steam as well. So typically, game engines tend to have certain types of games that they're more suited towards creating. So before making any sort of commitment, I'd actually take a look at the list of games that have been created with the respective engines before making any sort of decision on which one you want to start experimenting with or even developing on. All right, folks, I know that was a lot of information, but honestly, one of the biggest points that I want to make, and I mentioned this before in the previous episode, is that you do need to start somewhere. Dreaming big is awesome, but unless you take those first steps, you're never going to make it to that destination. So do your research, figure out some options, and start working towards your goals. Maybe take some classes or do some mods or create a level for a game that you like. Start working on a co-op Pac-Man game or just something, just anything. Additionally, just so you know, the act of creating and finishing something is huge and will actually have a pretty profound effect on pushing you towards your goal of becoming a game designer. So with the completion of a project, no matter how big or small, you learn. You learn what to do, what not to do, what you can do better, etc. It lights a different kind of fire inside of you, and one that hopefully inspire you and drive you to move onwards and upwards. And I think that's just about going to wrap up this episode. Whew, got the feels. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe and maybe even share these episodes with somebody else that might appreciate them, especially if you're enjoying them. And don't forget to join us next time when we discuss what to do for your next interview. All right, see you.